Here's a sticky conundrum for you. Thinking about as I'm walking down the road. New spot, walking with the dog. I was reading last week about equity, diversity, inclusion, anti-racism plan task force from a particular post-secondary higher education institution in Canada. I was struck by what I read in there, a certain amount of FOMO, fear of missing out, or we're doing this because everyone else is doing this. A certain amount, we have a saying around our household with our kids, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean you have to. Think about your choices and decisions, and I've found that to a certain degree with some of this work around diversity, inclusion, and equity. And it seems to be lost sometimes that a lot of this work, especially in higher education in Canada, it's happening because it has to happen. The courts have said so. Human Rights Tribunal ruling 2016 said so. Court settlements said that these have to happen. Otherwise, institutions will lose funding or not get funding from the federal government and the big research funding bodies. So there's that piece. The other piece is I was looking at a well-written report I found out of the Department of National Defence in Canada around systemic racism. And it was looking at some of the stats from the 2016 census in Canada, and there's more up to date and new reports coming out on the last census. One of the pieces that struck me was that the workforce in Canada is 75% white, and then it goes through the different marginalized populations. And so the danger with some equity, diversity, inclusion initiatives is they start to sound like a numbers game, and they turn into an identity game. And there's an identity game, or certainly not a game for the individual involved, that's playing out in the media today and yesterday around Indigenous identity and identities, and turning it into a numbers game becomes really slippery. So let me give you an example. If I'm working in an organization that has an equity, diversity, inclusion plan, and I identify as neurodiverse, deaf, and gay, white male. Where does that put me on the spectrum of marginalized individuals in terms of looking at an equity, diversity, and inclusion plan? And I'm not suggesting that that's what these plans are supposed to do. I'm just saying that those are the dangers that happen if this turns into a numbers game, a quantitative game. And alongside of that, what I'm thinking about and pondering is that there's some predictions or some estimates on what the workforce will look like in Canada in the next decade or so, based on the fact that we have to have some immigration for our workforce. Federal government has just changed the student visa requirements around work and piloting an initiative where students, international students who pay astronomical tuition fees, can work more than 20 hours, because that was the limitation before, 20 hours a week. Now they can work more. To help with costs, probably help some of the families that have mortgaged lives and properties to be able to send kids to Canada. So the conundrum that I'm looking at in this is I'm curious, as all of these equity, diversity, inclusion initiatives roll out in higher education, what higher education institutions are doing around the systems to support that work, in terms of the fact that one of the biggest pieces of work is most likely going to be around dispute resolution, or complaints, or just tensions and uncomfortable conversations that will need to be had frequently around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And how much training is rolling out? What are the systems looking like for institutions to be able to do that and support that in a good way? I have a feeling it's not very much, or maybe there's some that are leading. I don't know. I'm not currently immersed in that to be able to see that. Send me some links, or let me know some of the initiatives that are happening on that front that are leading. Or what do you think about this? What sort of systems need to get put in place? Might be severely unprepared for the work that's rolling out right now.